Alpine Touch has been a staple of Montana for nearly 8 decades. Folks around the Treasure State have been putting Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasoning on their steaks and burgers for longer than most of us have been alive. The holidays are coming up. If you want to knock everyone's socks off, be sure to pick up some Alpine Touch Cold Smoke Rub for the best flavor for your Thanksgiving turkey or your Christmas prime rib. Alpine Touch comes in the mail right to your door. Just visit alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
All right, Tuesdays with Tootell, National Championship edition. Thanks to all of our.
Excuse me.
Hi.
It isn't Nuanez now, okay? It isn't Big Sky Breakdown with Colter Nuanez and guests.
Yeah.
This is mine, and now I'm gonna run the show.
Okay, you're going. Let's go.
Welcome to Tuesdays with Tootell, the last one of 2024. I am your host, Ryan Tootell, along with my sidekick, Colter Nuanez. Colter, great to have you once again on my podcast. This is fun.
Here we are. I'm wearing my my old school Yellowstone National Park shirt. I don't even have any Skyline gear on. We're doing this way after our bedtimes. This is awesome. How you doing?
Yeah, it is. I'm doing great, man. I've seen very many memes recently that I have agreed so very much with, where especially when Christmas and New Year's Day fall on Wednesdays, this is just the weirdest week of the year, like the in-between week, man. It's like, what do I do? Can I work? Should I not? Should I what? I don't know what to do.
So many people ask me,
I'm
what do you
glad
do
we
for
have
New
this.
Year's? Everybody's like, what do you do for New Year's? I was like, what do you mean? It's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. I have no idea. I'm gonna go home and eat dinner, and that's it. I don't know.
We'll watch 3 FBS playoff games and call it a day. That's what I'm gonna do on New Year's Day. So but we got bigger fish to fry, man, because I will say this, the first round of the FBS playoffs were trash in terms of the games, and the FCS playoffs have been fantastic, especially the Final Four. The semifinals were great. NDSU, SDSU lived up to expectations, and South Dakota gave Montana State a real game in Bozeman, but the Bobcats finished that thing off, and now Montana State, an opportunity at redemption, January 6th in Frisco against North Dakota State, who knocked them out of the playoffs last year and who beat them 3 years ago in the national championship in this very same venue. So I think that if you polled the Montana State Bobcats to a person in their heart of hearts, they would say, yes, we are so very happy that the Bison came out on top against the 2-time defending national champion Jackrabbits and are in fact going to be revisiting Frisco, Texas. This has an opportunity to be an epic national championship game, huh?
Well, and this is what we want. This is like how we want it to go in sports, especially in college sports where it's young people, young men learning lessons and then like sort of revamping and getting another chance at it. And I remember when Jeff Choate said, infamously in 2018, he said, hey, 2018 was the first year they had made the playoffs since Choate came back and sort of the first year of the rebuild. And they went to Fargo and they got killed. It was Troy Anderson versus the Bison, and Troy had a touchdown and North Dakota State scored 52, and that was it. And Choate said, now we've seen the elephant. Like, we know what Goliath looks like. Like, we now have seen it, and we know how close or far we are away. And then the next year, they met them not in the second round, but in the semis. And instead of 52-10, it was 42-14. Okay, progress, sort of.
Yeah, right.
and then Choate leaves. And then they make it back, and they see him in the national championship. And it's 38-10. Still kind of progress, but you're still getting your ass kicked. And then last year they saw him when, they had already gotten run roughshod and shoved in the corner. Yeah, I mean, their season was hanging by a absolute thread. And then if they go beat NDSU, it would have salvaged the entire thing. and then they lose in overtime on a blocked extra point. What have these guys, though, this group of seniors from Montana State been hearing since they were freshmen, since they got recruited, since they were, redshirting back in 2019, 2020, whatever it was? That's the standard. That's who we have to beat. And I thought it was very, very poignant and also telling. You mentioned it first because I was getting ready for the press conference. You were watching on TV. Tommy Malot's post-game interview on ABC. He made sure to stare right in the camera
Yes, he did.
and said, "Hey, this is the matchup we want. We cannot wait to play these guys again." And then in the
Yeah.
post-game
Yeah.
press conference, he same thing. Somebody asked him, "Hey, what do you think of the matchup?" He said, "Can't wait to play those guys. That's it." And then
Yeah.
Brody Grebe got asked the same thing. He said, "Hey, I'm glad it's NDSU. We're ready." You know,
Yeah.
it's so rare
Yeah.
you get this, but it's also cool on the NDSU side of things too, right? Like, who would ever thought that Cam Miller, Tommy Malott, freshman quarterback starting in the 2021 national championship game, here they are completing two of the great careers in the FCS. So it's a
Well,
cool story on both sides.
and of course, that is the asterisk of particularly the final score of the national championship 3 years ago, is that Tommy Watt did go down early in that game and, was not available. Obviously, the starting quarterback had transferred prior to that. And so then you end up with this situation where Montana State probably not going to win that game anyways against that NDSU team. But the incremental progress, if you're talking about it just anecdotally by final score over the previous seasons, probably would have been a much closer. Like, I think they understood that, hey, we're in the ballpark here. But I would like to talk about the arc of Montana State a little bit from then to now, because that was Brent Vigen's first year as the head coach. And for my part in it, and I think for a lot of people's part in it, I mean, you know the history of this stuff better than anybody, but I mean, aside from, and maybe not even aside from, the 1984 national championship team, that was, and to my mind is, the all-time senior class of Montana State football, obviously starting with Troy Anderson, but with just I mean, it's just sometimes the stars just align in terms of the guys who show up and are there. And that felt to me, for Montana State, like this is the high water mark. Like, you're never going to recreate that thing. And I was just wrong. And I'm not saying it's been recreated, but the sustained success, and I granted there's a couple sort of very small incremental, didn't get it, went to the semifinals the following year, only made it, into the round of 16 the year after that, on account of the loss to Montana, and then having to face NDSU even though they had a bye. And now they're back in the national championship, and not back, but favored, slightly, but favored nonetheless against NDSU, and undefeated and 14-0 at everything. And if you would have told me 3 years ago that, hey, in 3 years, with a whole new senior class, and even with Tommy Malott leading the way, that this is going to be an undefeated number one team in the nation that's favored to win the national championship, I would have told you no chance. I would have said this is as good as it's going to get at Montana State in 2021. And you know what? It wasn't. Like, this is better than that. I'm not comparing the teams per se, but just in terms of what they've done on the field, undefeated number one in the country. And it's stunning to me that that wasn't just a high point. That was the first huge benchmark of a school, a city, a university, a football team saying, we're here now. This you are going to have to deal with year in and year out for the foreseeable future, period. And I'm completely impressed with it.
Are you paying too much in taxes? Elevated Tax and Accounting is a firm that specializes in tax planning and strategy to minimize your tax bill. Elevated Tax consult with you on tax strategy throughout the year, so no more waiting until the end of the year and hoping for the best. As a business owner, you know your sole focus should be spent working on your business, not in it. Outsourcing gives you the time to concentrate on the core reasons you started your company, to create and innovate a top-tier product and generate profits. Elevated Tax and Accounting, elevating you and your business with a modern professional touch. And so much of that's the guy at the helm, right? Like so much of that is Brent Vigen. And
well, and the rest of the administration, man. I mean, you talk about President Cruzado and Leon Costello as the AD. I mean, they have put themselves just institutionally in a position to continue this.
There's no doubt. And not to go on some diatribe comparing the alternative sides of the rivalry, which is like what we do for a living at Skyline Sports, but leadership from the highest level is the most important thing to get to this point. And you can't understate not just Brent Vigen, but also Leon Costello and also Waded Cruzado. And again, not to bring the Grizz into this for any more than about 3 seconds worth, but when George Dennison was the president of the University of Montana and Bill Moose was the athletic director of the University of Montana and Don Reed was the head coach of the University of Montana, that's why University of Montana is winning national championships. So it's tried and true, and that's what South Dakota State has had in recent years. That's what North Dakota State has had. So it is totally reflective. There's an element there where the FCS has been diluted a little bit. When you're comparing like 2021 to 2024, NDSU
talk about James Madison, Sam Houston, like that kind of stuff, like those really good teams being gone.
And that's I think that here's the thing, we're going to get a lot of Bison listeners on this because North Dakota State people are awesome and they find every media that there is. North Dakota State is a really good team this year, and I think everybody that follows North Dakota State would tell you that this team is very good, but they are nowhere close to like the great teams that they've had in the past. And again, that's not the conversation I want to have at this exact moment, though, because you're right. Your point, there's this iconic picture, and it's not even a great picture in terms of the action. It's just a great picture in terms of the people, but it's from the 2021 national championship game, and it's like a wide shot of behind the center, and the North Dakota State offense is like down in the red zone, and the offensive line, all 5 offensive linemen now are in the NFL. Cam Miller is the quarterback. Hunter Lebke, who plays for the Dallas Cowboys, is the running back. I think there's a receiver out there that's a NFL guy. And then on the Bobcat side of things, Troy Anderson's the inside linebacker. Daniel Hardy's the defensive end. Ty Okada's the nickelback. You're talking like this is the picture of the FCS. And
there's 10 dudes in the picture that are in the league now.
There's like 10 or 12 dudes in the league, including like 6 or 7 that start in the league. So, this is a formidable frame. But if the question is, how did Montana State get to this point of sustainability as well as excellence, as well as maybe even superiority to that team, I think that it's the fact that Brent Vigen has developed. Because, like, does this team have a Troy Anderson? Tommy Mellott is a pretty special player, but nobody's as special as Troy Anderson. But this Bobcat team is better across the board because they're deeper and because they're more functional. And, like, they have had some of the worst injuries of anybody in the country.
Yeah.
And guess who hasn't missed a beat? Not for 1 second during a 15-0 run. And that's a testament to their depth. And I think it's the cohesiveness, the common goal. And that's why I bring like the dilution of the FCS into this, because the program that has not been diluted whatsoever throughout this entire dilution has been Montana State. And they deserve so much credit for that because they've had so many different excuses and reasons to be diluted, and they never went down that road. They've continued to get better literally for 6 or 7 years, and that's why they're on this sort of doorstep of greatness.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
So will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.
You know, I think you're 100% right. And the other thing that Montana State has now done, and this again is, compare and contrast, but they are, I can't put numbers to this, but as a matter of sense, of feel, of, scuttlebutt and hearing and observation, they're the school that more in-state kids want to attend now more than the University of Montana. And they're the football team that more in-state kids seem to want to play for than the University of Montana. And it's by no means 80-20 or anything like that, but for a very long time, the shoe was on the other foot, where Montana kind of got the pick of the litter of the in-state kids. And now it's even, and I would say slanted to Montana State on where are guys wanting to go. And there's, again, we can get into a lot of reasons for that, but I think especially in the West, in the lower populated states whose highest level of football is FCS football, that being the Dakotas, that being Montana, Idaho, and so forth, the teams in the states that can put the fence up around their state and bring the best talent to their school just have such a leg up. And especially Montana, Idaho, and I would say South Dakota, with the emergence of the Coyotes in Vermilion now, because SDSU has sort of dominated the South Dakota landscape in that sense. But South Dakota is really good. And certainly North Dakota State, all respect to UND, they dominate the state of North Dakota, okay? And even into like western Minnesota, you know what I mean? Like they've got a big range of guys that they pull from. Montana and Idaho, it's a battle, man, in-state battle with two, schools that both want to think or, want to find themselves, with the upper hand and that stuff. And Montana State clearly has been able to do that and get the in-state talent to come there and play there and care, right? I mean, that's the other thing. And then also, not to make it too obvious or even too simple, but it's Tommy Mellott, man. Like you get a kid who turns out to be probably the Walter Payton Award-winning dude who's from the state of Montana. Guess what? Quarterback matters. I realize this is like a shocking revelation, but that is a fact, and he has proven that out. And with all of the greatness that they've had on the offensive line and running back and been able to rotate guys in when they've gotten hurt and tremendous defensive players and everything like that, like it is Tommy Mellott that steers the ship, that makes them who and what they are. And the fact that he's been a 3-year and few game and playoff starter, going back to his freshman year, it just makes all the difference in the world. And there's no question that he is paramount to why they are where they are today.
And that's the thing too, is there's so much made of the in-state guys, especially at Montana. Montana State. There's good players from South Dakota. There's great players from South Dakota, North Dakota, and all that sort of stuff. But, you look at NDSU's roster, I think they have 20-something guys from North Dakota. South Dakota State has, same, It's not half, though. Montana State has 47 guys from Montana. and forever, though, that's been your baseline, your foundation, your heart and soul. Those are the guys that show you the way. And if those guys become good players, that's awesome. But this is one of the great collections of talent from the state of Montana that has ever been. And that's bared out in the postseason accolades. And this is the first time in the history of the Big Sky Conference, which has been a league since 1963, in which the offensive player of the year in the Big Sky Conference, the defensive player of the year in the Big Sky Conference, and the freshman of the year in the Big Sky Conference were all from Montana. Tommy Blott, Brody Grebe, Adam Jones. You also look at Marcus Weir, who's the best offensive lineman probably in the country, other than the left tackle from North Dakota State. I mean, those are the two best in my opinion. You look at guys like McCain O'Reilly, inside linebacker for the Cats, Rylan Ort, Taco Dowler. I mean, these guys are first team all-conference, all-American type players. They are not just like your spunky heart and soul type of guys. Like, these guys are the best players in the country, man. And your point about Tommy Blott is so excellent, and he's boosted up by these other guys as well. And
absolutely.
That's how they've gotten to this point, man. It's like Sean Howe, the defensive line coach and co-defensive coordinator, told me last week. He said, "Hey, man, that's our secret sauce. All of our best players are also the guys that this means the most to, and they're also the guys that are our best leaders. That's how you go undefeated."
Well, and here's the other thing, man. Everybody wants to plant the flag for their state. In North Dakota, we know good and well, when you look particularly through North Dakota State and the talent that has trafficked through there and what they've gone on to do in the NFL and CFL and whatever it might be, remarkable, right? And I'm not saying anything. I mean, that's as good as it gets at the FCS level. But if you just look at the tradition of state of Montana born and bred football players that have matriculated through Montana and Montana State and then gone on to be NFL caliber players. I mean, you are on the board and right and have helped create the Montana Football Hall of Fame. And you go and look at that wall of talent. Guess what? If you can get the Montana kids, the best Montana kids, you're going to be damn good. That's just a fact. Every single year, that's just what it is. And we've talked about, hey, man, has there been a dearth of talent in the state of Montana in general? And is it down at times in, specifically linemen? I know that, we're the big offensive linemen and all that kind of stuff. And fair enough, that stuff is true. But guess what? There's still Tommy Malotts, man, and there's still Junior Bergens, and there's still these dudes out there who are the real deal showstopper type of players that can go and compete and make NFL rosters and better than that and play, contribute at the NFL level. I mean,
the best lineman in the country besides the kid from NDSU is Marcus Ware, and he's from Billings, Montana, right? I mean, the best defensive end one of the best defensive ends in the country is from Millstone, Montana. Population 120. I mean, if and when Brody Grebe makes it to the NFL, I bet you he has the distinction as the guy from the smallest town in the entire league. I'm pretty sure.
I'd love it if he went to the Atlanta Falcons and joined Troy Anderson and let Troy from Dillon and Brody Grebe from Millstone go walk the streets in the ATL for a while. That is quite a tandem.
100%, man. There's no doubt. So,
it is Tuesdays with Tootell. Oh, go ahead.
It is a cool part of this whole thing. Is these guys sort of doing it. I also think it's important that they know who they're doing it for. I've written about this extensively. They fully understand that they are doing this for not just the Bobcat football program, not just Montana State University, but for the state as a whole. And I think that's a really, really cool thing.
Bobcats win again.
So, fifth quarter at the R Bar?
Dude, I could crush a burger right now. Can you guys pick it up? I'm thirsty back here. Guys, what's up? Hop on in. Fifth quarter's this way.
Oh, new R Bar merch.
Yo, what's the fifth quarter?
They have food, drinks, and giveaways after every home game.
And these sweet Bobcat cups.
Oh, I'm in.
Take me to the R Bar.
Join us at the Rockin R Bar after every home game for the fifth quarter.
Let's go, steer the blue and gold.
Start with the history of Five Valleys Restoration? How'd you get into this? How'd you come up with this?
So actually in 1996, I went to work for a company called RestoreX of Montana in Sidney, Montana.
Wow.
I was working for my folks as a high school kid, and I got fired by my dad. So I was playing Babe Ruth baseball, Legion baseball, and I couldn't do both, and I couldn't work and play baseball. So I came to work one day, and my dad said, "You're fired." But then he said, "You also have to have a job." And so that, of course, created some havoc. So I walked across the street from his office to a restoration company called RestoreX in Montana, a guy named Ben McDowell, who has now since passed, and worked for him all through high school and college and my breaks and after school. Was doing after hours calls as a high school kid, basically. We had pagers back then. It was old enough. It was crazy. And then just worked all the way through. And then in 2007, I decided to start my own business.
When it came to just the people that sort of influenced you to do that, you learned probably from a lot of people along the way.
I've had a lot of influential people. I always go back to my dad. My dad was an optometrist, but he was just a good influence on starting a business. I have an uncle who's been very entrepreneurial based, doing a little bit of everything, hauling fertilizer, custom combining, you name it. And then Ben McDowell himself. So he was very influential for me moving forward. And then his right-hand man was a guy named Will McCammett, who has taught me just about everything I know within the industry. So.
It is Tuesdays with Tootell. It is the Big Sky Breakdown. I am your host, capital H, host, Gus Tootell, and I'm here with my friend Colter Nuanez. Colter is the one, however, who's got the reads. So if you have somebody you'd like to throw out there, this would be the opportunity.
Well, this is the easiest read ever. If you want a place to watch the Bobcat football game against North Dakota State, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. How about the Rockin R Bar? Sounds like the best place you could possibly go. They are not only having food and drink specials all afternoon long leading up to the game and during the game, they're also giving away a big screen TV as well. So happy to have the Rockin R Bar back in the fold. We have been great friends of theirs, and they've been great partners of ours on and off throughout the years. But we actually started the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series before we ever even started Skyline Sports. We had the what do we call it? The Bobcat Blitz from the Rockin' Bar, like circa 2012, 2013. So these guys have been helping us out forever, and they are one of our premier sponsors when it comes to our Road to Frisco coverage. So thanks to Mike and the boys down at the Rockin' R Bar. Go watch the national championship game and get entered in to win a free TV.
Well, the Rockin' R is a good time, always has been, and it's also worth, I think, like $6.8 million in real estate now. So that good for them. Get that street frontage in downtown Bozeman.
We got to tell the people the story about like our time lapse in the Rockin' R Bar on the rivalry weekend. Where you weren't quite there at the beginning, but I went down there. We did our Nuanez Now radio show from there. And
I showed up late. Yeah. I
got there at 3, set up the show, and there was a reunion of Montana State alums from the 70s. So, people that are a little older.
Back when Bozeman was Montana, as they say, yes.
Yeah. And so I did my show, and they're all listening in intently. It was great to have this crowd because they were just in it. They loved it. They're radio heads. It's awesome. And then the show gets over at 6, and it was like line change. And then in rolls like all the guys that played for the Cats in like the 90s. And then at it was like line change. Here's all the guys that played in the 2000s and the 2010s. And then you got there, and then we were standing around hanging out. And then all of a sudden it was like line change. Oh, everybody's 20. We have to go.
We're into full party mode. Yeah. Well, it's good to service everybody. You know what I mean? Give them a time of day at the same outfit and let them roll through the Rockin' R, man.
Indeed.
I know that you break this particular game down, and you have a bunch of times, and you're going to a bunch of times more. But I'm certainly not letting you off the hook in this particular moment with me here when we just talk about the specifics of the matchup and what you've seen out of North Dakota State so far this season. And obviously you and I have covered Montana State game in and game out the whole way through, so we know them intimately. But when you take a look compare and contrast what North Dakota State does well and what Montana State does well. I mean, these look like two teams who like the same stuff. They're about the same things in a lot of ways. Where does each team hold an advantage, hold a disadvantage, and what do you see in this football game?
Man, the thing that's so fitting and almost poetic about this is that Tommy Malotte's been the starting quarterback for Montana State for however many, probably close to 40 games now. And there's been this sort of omnipresent thought. The Cats will never win the big one unless Tommy Malott can take them over the top. Well, guess what? That's the number one matchup in this game. Can Tommy Malott do his thing? Can he be a dual threat? Can he complete passes? If they want to take the shackles off and run him, I mean, why not? What else you got to play for at this point?
Oh no, it's a full send.
It's full send.
I mean, of course, yeah. And also additional to that, Adam Jones got a little dinged up in the semifinal bump. Yeah. I think he's okay. And what about also Scott Ray Humphrey? Because I mean, if you've got those three dudes ready to roll, I mean, that's as good as it gets in the country as far as three guys running the football for a single team.
Well, and they also might have Julius Davis back too.
Right.
That gives him another one. I mean, he's the guy that started at Wisconsin. He's the guy he's actually their best back, and they've gotten to this point. I mean, Humphrey has had such a great year that it's hard to say that even if Davis would have been full strength, that he's not.
Yeah.
But either way, like those guys are both premier, and I mean, I think if you're going to score it out, offensive line versus offensive line, stalemate. Defensive line versus defensive line. I'd give Montana State a slight edge just because of depth, but like Eli Mostert is a monster, man. I mean, he's the best D tackle in the country. So that's hard to overlook. Linebackers, NDSU has the edge because Montana State's best linebacker, Danny Ulakepa's on the shelf. Secondary, man, draw. Receivers probably edge NDSU because Bryce Lance is the man. So
I don't think it's probably. I think that's a decided edge for the Bison in terms of wideouts. I mean, those dudes ball.
And Bryce Lance is playing as good as anybody in the country right now.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. That touchdown by Bryce Lance in the semifinal was just insane. Insane.
I said, I can't remember who I was watching with, but I was like, oh, he just got drafted. Good job. Good job, buddy. You just got drafted with that catch.
Yeah.
But that's why it comes down to Tommy Malott, Cam Miller, one last time. Like that's pretty cool. That's what it is. And so yeah, I mean, I think here's the number one thing I'm most excited about is we've been down to Frisco. I think this will be our fourth time, Skyline Sports. And the last three times, it was a hope and a prayer for the Big Sky Conference representative.
Yeah.
Even last year, the Grizz were red hot. They still went in as 2 touchdown dogs or something. It was like 11.5-point dogs, Montana State was like almost 17-point dogs when they went there last time. Like Eastern Washington with Eric Berry and those guys, like they performed pretty well and they got beat by 3 scores. Like this is a 2.5-point spread because it's gonna be a good game. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a good thing.
What do you think about coaching in this game?
Man, what a good question too. First of all, now that we have a pretty large sample size, like it's pretty hard to say that Brent Vegan is not one of the great coaches we've ever covered, even though it's only 4 years.
He is and I'm sort of scratching my head to even say the premier coach in the FCS right now, with Rogers taking the Washington State job, leaving SDSU, and he was only there 2 years anyways in terms of being a head coach. Obviously, he was with South Dakota State for a very, very long time. So but um, obviously it's about every 3 years that a North Dakota State football coach takes an FBS job and goes and does whatever they do, whether it's Wyoming or Kansas State or whatever. But, you got a first-year head coach now at NDSU in terms of being the head coach for the Bison. And you've got Coach Vegan, who, I mean, no, I'm not going to say anybody from the FCS can call their shot. I mean, he's not Bill Belichick, but he's fielding phone calls a lot, guaranteed, from programs, all over the place that want him to come and coach for them.
I mean, he tied Sonny Holland for wins last week. It's only been 4 years. I mean, Sonny Holland's got a statue
out there. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Not only that, though, it's like you total up the 9 losses. NDSU in the playoffs twice, South Dakota State twice, 3 FBSs, Idaho, Montana, and Missoula twice. That's it. You literally don't have any sort of unexplainable losses on your resume.
He's never had a bad loss in terms of the opponent. He's had some bad losses in terms of the outcome and how it happened,
no doubt,
and the way it looked. But he's never had. He's not losing to 500 and worse football teams. Period.
Literally never. So, and never losing at home. I mean, they lost at home once, and that was on the block extra point. I mean, he's undefeated at home. Besides that,
so. Here's the question. Here's the flip side, though. Okay, no bad losses, great. What's the best wins? Montana at home 4 times. Well, yeah,
twice,
2 times for Vegan, and
Idaho
and New Mexico. You get an FBS win beating Idaho. That's great, but like all the losses that you talked about, there's no wins on the other side of that charter.
Yeah.
In terms of South Dakota State, North Dakota State.
I would say less wins. They beat SDSU in the semifinals in 2021. And that was until South Dakota State lost last week. That was South Dakota State's lone playoff loss.
Yeah.
Of the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
That was their lone FCS loss of the last 4 or 5 years.
The only thing I'll say, though, about those other losses, and especially the ones to, the South Dakota States or the North Dakota States and so on, it's one thing to go and lose when you're a 17-point underdog or a 14-point underdog and everybody kind of pats you on the back and says, hey, man, you guys had a great run, but that's North Dakota State over there, and they're just going to win it. That ain't the case this year. You're favored to win the game. You're undefeated. You're the number 1 team in the nation. And again, not that the point spread that has nothing to do with what I'm getting at. I'm just using that to highlight the point where there's a level of expectation on Montana State that they have never, ever carried before. And I think that there is palpable Montana, across the state of Montana, not just to go to the national championship, but to go and get the thing done. And when you go up against a great team like NDSU, and we expect, I think, for this to be, a very competitive game in terms of being close. Let's just say that it's going to, how do you respond to that? How do you act as a team in that? How are you able to execute in that? Because it all comes together in those moments. I mean, golfers, right? Best golfers on earth, been playing their entire lives, won on the Corn Ferry Tour, playing, championship golf the whole time. When the time comes and you've got a 1-stroke lead on 18 in a major, you've just never felt it. And like guys after, like, I couldn't feel my hands anymore. It's like all of a sudden the situation, it dramatically shifts the way you can potentially act. And obviously golf is a terrible analogy. It's just because I'm wearing the hat. But how are you able to execute as a football team? We talked about this last week about, they haven't been in a close game yet. I mean, South Dakota from Montana State was the closest game really other than New Mexico to start the season. That's a whole different deal that they've been in. And even that game ultimately it's not like they had to put a drive together and come from behind at the end to get it done, which very well may be the case on January 6th. So it's exciting, but you just never know how a team is going to respond in those moments.
Big Set Breakdown probably presented by the Bobcat Collective. We've been rolling out all sorts of senior profile stories over the last couple of all about Montana
been great.
State. Thank you. If you like the player you're reading about, go check out the Bobcat Collective website and then go over to the merch section. You can get T-shirts of that player. So pretty cool. They've been dropping the links in response to our social media. So check that out too. But bobcatcollective.com, you want a free membership to the Bobcat Collective, bobcatcollective.com/skyline. Okay, so on that note, then I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Montana State, as the kids would say, has been a wagon this year.
My God, haven't they?
I mean, we're talking about like these times where they got pushed. Like they were tied with Eastern Washington at the end of the third quarter and they won by 2 touchdowns. They slugged it out with South Dakota last week. They won by 2 touchdowns. That's it. Like
Montana cut it to 16 at the end of the third quarter.
Right? They have won every single game by 2 scores, and 10 out of the 15 of them, they mercy ruled the other team. They literally were up 42 points and put in the backups in the third quarter, and you called off the Dogs. So the whole last decade plus of the FCS has been defined by everybody being scared of NDSU. NDSU is in the national championship for the first time since 2022, but also haven't won one since the last time they beat the Cats in the national championship. I know that's not that long in the greater scope of history, but
of course,
in the scope of these players, it's same. NDSU has the title from when they were freshmen, but is there any chance that Montana State actually has that intimidation factor to North Dakota State?
I don't think that North Dakota State is intimidated by anybody, including Montana State. So I'm just going to say no to that question. But I do not rule out that Montana State rolls in. Like, I could see Montana State winning this game by 14. I could certainly see them losing this game too. By the way, I'm not saying that I expect them to win, but if Montana State gets on a roll, I mean, it's just like, what do you do? What they do it so many different ways, man, because they can quote unquote nickel and dime you to death, which I don't think is their best option in this particular game, because I do think North Dakota's defense, especially their front, just is fantastic. And I just don't know that you're going to pick up 5 yards, on 3 consecutive runs, inside, outside, inside again, or whatever, against this team like regularly throughout the course of a game. But what Montana State does, man, is they pick up 3, they pick up 4, and then they pick up 62 and take it to the house. And I think that Montana State has had, more big plays than anybody in the country, period. And they have almost all happened on the ground. And if the dam breaks, you got problems. And I think that Montana State, I'll say this, North Dakota State is not intimidated by Montana State. Montana State is not only not intimidated, they're genuinely thrilled to be playing North Dakota State in the national championship.
No doubt.
So this is 2 heavyweights right here. Like, this is the real deal, where both of them think they're going to knock the other one out. Like, they think they're going to get in here and that the other one's got nothing for them, and nobody's afraid of anybody. And that is all well and good until you get in the ring, and then you see, okay, who's for real. And if they're both for real, we're in for one of the all-time great national championships at the FCS level. Like, we really are in for it. But there's a chance that one of them gets the advantage and just says, no, not today. You thought you belonged, but you do not. And if that eventuates, it would be my contention that it would probably be Montana State that is the one who's got the chokehold.
You asked me about the coaches, and I went down the Brent Vegan rabbit hole. the coaching matchup though is such an interesting one too, because like North Dakota State's Brent Vigen's alma mater. Brent Vigen was there from when he was a player in the mid '90s.
Oh, right.
As a
Knows
coach
them. Yes.
all the way until 2013. Like he was at North Dakota State for almost 20 years before it went to Wyoming and then came to Montana State. But he's been circling in this same stratosphere as Tim Polasek because the coaching tree is so rich at North Dakota State. Like Craig Bull's coaching tree, you got Chris Kleiman now at Kansas State and Matt Entz. He got the Fresno State job, correct? Anyways,
I take it on testimony.
Yeah. Matt Entz left during the playoff run last year to go to USC, and then I believe he took the Fresno State job. Either way, Brent Vigen and Tim Polasek were both mentioned for that NDSU job, but that Polasek got it. I don't know if Vigen ever wanted it or what. I don't know. I have any idea about any of that. But these two guys have been in each other's stratospheres. I believe they've coached together. I don't know if they were coached against each other. Polasek came in with the explicit goal of, hey, the standard has slipped. Let's get it back to what it was. And I don't know if they've got there yet. How do you replicate that standard? I mean, they lost like 8 games in 9 years,
Well, and the question is, did the standard slip, or has a lot of teams put in a ton of resources to try and track you down because you've been so good for so long?
I mean, South Dakota State built a $55-60 million stadium, right? Like,
yeah.
High tides raise all ships, right? Like,
right.
And this is the same thing the Grizz have gone through for so many years, is that they were the sort of the lone rep in the West, and then everybody was like, well, how do we be like that? And everybody's investing in it, and they've gotten better and caught up and yada, yada, yada. But anyways, it's a good point. To finish that point, though, I don't know how the coaching matchup will play out. Because Polasek and Vigen couldn't be more different. Vigen is the master of stoicism and steadiness, and he's the great decision maker, and he does all these calculated things. And Polasek is like, I'm gonna hit you in the face with a hammer. You know what I mean? Like he's offensive line coach. That's what he is. Like he's a hardcore dude. So how does that cater? Like is being more tempered and steady and resting on your preparation, or fire and brimstone, let's go kill them? Like, which one works better? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Fire and Brimstone beat the 2-time defending national champions twice in the same season, so that's pretty damn good. So we'll we'll find out pretty soon which way it's going to go. But it's again, it's been a long time, man. It's been a long time, regardless of whether it's been a Montana State team or no Montana representation, that we've had a national championship where the conversation just hasn't been, how do you try and keep it close and then maybe pray for a miracle at the end to get the thing done, as opposed to now this is a real deal matchup. This is an absolute, let's just, okay, Montana State a slight favorite on the bets or whatever, but this is a coin flip football game as far as I'm concerned. And that is great news. It's been a long time. It doesn't mean the game isn't going, is going to go to overtime or whatever. You never know how these things actually play out, but at least in the lead up to it, this is a real football game. It's not just the king dingling out there going, well, we're going to hold court because that's what we do.
Yeah, that's right. And so often in these sorts of matchups, we're analyzing all the X's and O's and the personnel matchups and the offensive and defensive lines and stuff. But then we're also analyzing, like, will the moment be too big for one of these teams? That's out the window for this game.
It's not. It isn't. No, it will not be.
Right? Like, even last year, you knew Bobby Hauck would have his team ready, but are they ready to compete with a team that is the reigning national champs? They haven't lost in 2 years, Frisco, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. same thing with the Cats in 2021. Like they're playing the Goliath, and this team's going for their ninth national championship in 10 years and all this stuff. And
But I also for Montana State in 2001 and for Montana last year, the moment wasn't too big for those teams.
No.
The opponent was too big for those teams.
Right. I just said we were analyzing if it would be. It wasn't too big, no doubt.
No.
But it was a factor we analyzed leading into it. That's a non-factor to analyze at this exact moment, though.
Yes, right. No, and you're absolutely right, and that's great. Like it's such a luxury to get to sit here and go, well, I mean, good as South Dakota State was this year, they lost twice to the Bison. So you have to say the two best teams in the country are here. I mean, we had the top 8 seeds as the 8 remaining teams in the quarterfinals, the top 4 seeds as the 4 remaining teams in the semifinals, and now we have the top 2 seeds going to Frisco. So again, tip of the cap to the committee. And the seeding, and obviously some of that, a lot of that plays into having home field advantage, which obviously Montana State and North Dakota State both did throughout. So that's a big deal as well. But you got to say these are the 2 best teams in the nation, and they're, as we sit here and look at it, 2 evenly matched teams, 2 teams that are absolutely ready to go, and 2 teams of, tremendous. I don't know if destiny is the word, but of strength and of belief that this is our time. We're going to go do it.
Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by the Bobcat Collective at Montana State. The Bobcat Collective is the NIL collective that serves Montana State University student athletes. The collective is partnered with Montana State to connect fans, alumni, businesses, and local nonprofits with Montana State student athletes. Opportunities through the collective allow student athletes to earn compensation while serving the greater Montana State University community. Sign up now for memberships and enjoy automatic entry into raffles for free tickets while supporting the bright minds at Montana State. They have multiple different membership tiers, and you can also be a one-time supporter, and you can also business partner or corporate supporter. Visit bobcatcollective.com for more. Okay, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
You mentioned South Dakota State. Jimmy Rogers takes the Washington State job. That's a whole separate podcast, probably, for the logistics and ins and outs and all the things we knew and didn't know throughout all that whole search, especially in relation to Brent Vigen. But the thing I'll say right here, right now, is that Brent Vigen was in the mix for that job, a strong candidate for that job, and ended up, no matter which way you want to phrase it, either not taking or not getting or whatever. He's not the head coach of Washington State. He's the head coach of Montana State. But this day and age, that kind of stuff spreads like wildfire because of social media, et cetera, et cetera. So there was, threads on every FCS message board and Reddit and Twitter and et cetera, et cetera. Brent Vigen leaving, yada, yada, yada. The other thing I can report factually is that Brent Vigen texted the entire Montana State team when Jimmy Rogers took the South Dakota State job, before Jimmy Rogers took the South Dakota State job, and just said, I'm here at Montana State. Let's go win the national championship. The fact that Brent Vigen is the coach at Montana State, not just for the game on January 6th, but after the game on January 6th, how much does that play a factor into this game?
I think it does, in the sense of it doesn't, I don't think it makes things better than they are, but it doesn't, it avoids what would have been a distraction and maybe compromising in some sense that it would have been if he had been headed to Washington State or somewhere else. These coaches, and it's different now than it used to be, but this is a very tight-knit group in Bozeman, man. The players, the coaches, time a lot, and Coach Vigen rolling in at the same time. Coach Vigen tagging Tommy to take over an already very good football team as a freshman to be starting quarterback, and just like made a coaching decision and a quarterback change late in the season to go with a freshman. And those two have been tied at the hip. for this entire run. And even though it's obviously timing a lot in the rest of the seniors, final game, to say, we did this together and we are continuing this thing together, and all the stuff that you said about, being a Bobcat or being a head coach at Montana State or being a football player at Montana State all rings true still, because you're not just riding the wave of success and our success as players to a paycheck in the FBS, And
Right.
again, I'm not going to fault any coach for taking a step to go to a place when they have an opportunity, man. Good for you. I'm just talking about the way that can and might play to a team that you're leaving, right? And honestly, it's bowl season, right? 47 bowl games, whatever it is. I think the single biggest factor of who wins these bowl games is what is the state of affairs of the coaches and the players that are there. Obviously, you got guys that are not sitting out because of going to the NFL, but coaches who have left have interim coaches that are playing, and the kids in the team are like, oh, okay, this dude just checked out. That's a team that's losing a bowl game, man. 9 times out of 10. It just is, no matter what the matchup is or whatever. So I think that again, is it a huge deal that he's staying? Are they better for it? Is it positively improving them? No, but it isn't now negatively impacting them like it might have. So I think in that sense, it's good for the Cats.
I totally agree. I think that the worst case scenario for them would have been he gets hired for a different job, it leaks, and that story's broken without knowledge. I don't think
The opportunity.
I don't think Vegan would
Yeah.
let that happen. Like, I think if he knew that there was a leak, that he would. I mean, I'll just be straight up honest. I've been reporting this super hard, and there's no leaks. Like,
Yeah.
I was trying to break like Vegan to Washington State all week, and it didn't happen. So, and it didn't
Yeah.
happen for a variety of reasons. But I do think the fact that he was transparent with the team, and also that it ended up not happening, is a huge actually boost. That said, even if he was on his way out, if the team wasn't aware of that throughout the process, I still think this specific team could have rallied and done well, just because.
Oh, it's still the national championship, dude.
Right, and all their best
there's
players,
no-
all their best players are seniors, and all their other best players could just go with him to Washington State if that's where he was going. So,
right. Well, and if you want to do a compare and contrast thing, let's look at Matt Entz, who was headed to USC, and
Right.
that was signed, sealed, and delivered prior to the Montana game in the semifinals last year.
Right.
And so he was going to get to coach out the season, and did so with his team,
Yeah.
and was very, very emotional after the loss and leaving North Dakota State. And no one can fault Coach Entz for going and going to Southern Cal, for crying out loud. And also, they were an excellent football team and were a whisper from, I mean, they're a tip 2-point conversion away from, possibly going to the national championship with that team. But you'll never know the answer. But is it possible that, like, if that wasn't part of the thing, does that change anything that actually happens in the football game? I mean, it's super hard to say that it would, because all of this stuff is ethereal. But also, like, when we talk about football and we talk about sports in general, man, we talk about stuff like chemistry, camaraderie, relationships, all that stuff all the time. And found like that's the stuff that's foundational. And when you see stuff that is where there's rifts, where there's guys not getting along, where there's coaches that are not, that are acting, however it might be towards players or whatever the case is, you see the results of that on the football field or on the basketball court, or where, in action. And you can't say, oh, a guy made an incomplete pass because the coach was already headed to USC. That's not how this stuff works. But there are broader sort of like psychological realities that are just at play. And it's very difficult, I would say nigh on impossible, to like adjudicate that stuff, but it is there. And like no one's going to sit here and say, well, if Matt Entz wouldn't have gone to USC, North Dakota State would have gone to the national championship last year. But it is a discussion that's worth sort of sitting and considering. And now the converse of that is happening with Montana State, with Coach Vegan staying in Bozeman.
Totally. And there's some people in the North Dakota State fan base that would say there's no way of knowing if North Dakota State would or would not have gone to the national championship last year if Matt Entz wouldn't have left. But they would say there's no way North Dakota State would have gone to the national championship this year unless Matt Entz left. That was the whole point of this whole thing, is that it was a mutual parting of ways. Like Matt Entz,
we're good.
Matt Entz had pounded the drum endlessly about how he wanted North Dakota State to be Division, FBS, and they got stuck. They are stuck, and it's by no fault of anything. Like they have support, resources, tradition, all that sort of stuff. But you got to be invited into a league, and it's Fargo, North Dakota, and like that's an uphill climb to be sure.
Or you got to make a league.
Snow belt, here we come.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of people that would say that and we were talking about this earlier when I was watching the Vikings beat the Packers, which I have not even said to a single word about until right now.
Oh yeah. Thanks for holding your tongue, Dick.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier though, where we were talking about Jimmy Rogers and how he inherited one of the great teams in FCS history, and then went undefeated, and I guess lost to Iowa, and then went undefeated after that for 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And he's like 27-3, like he's a great coach, and hopefully he's a great coach at Washington State. If you go 27-3, you're never doing better than that. Doesn't matter how good you ever are. That's tough. That was Entz at North Dakota State. Like he inherited the team that was in the midst of an undefeated run, and then took them on another undefeated run, and they had like the 3rd longest winning streak in college football history. And so then it's like, well, of course they've regressed since that point. Like they won like 40 games in a row.
Yeah, but there's no such thing as regression. There's only just the next championship in Fargo, man. Like that's I mean, that's just like, I mean, I mean, it's remarkable. It's one of the, I mean, I think it's North Dakota State and UConn women's basketball are like the 2 that are just they're
100%.
just gonna be that forever. That's it.
For sure. Like Sam and I were talking about, I mean, North Dakota State has 40 conference championships. 40.
Yeah.
40. Cats Grizz combined, who are so storied, I think have like 36 combined. North Dakota State has 40.
It's insane.
I mean, North Dakota State has, I believe, 15 national championships. 15. 62-9 D1. So yeah, I mean it's an unparalleled run, certainly. I know you got to go. Anything else about this game that either you have to add or that you want to know?
Is this the last one in Frisco, or is there one more before it goes to Nashville?
So here's how it actually is going. The Toyota Stadium is going under a renovation. So the contract is up. They're moving it to Nashville next year for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then the bidding process will open back up.
Well, I would love for the Cats and or Grizz to go to the national championship each of the next 2 years, and I will look forward to my credential from Skyline Sports so I can go to Nashville. That said, it's been, I know, a great venue for this game. They just hosted another bowl game. The Frisco Bowl was, played there and so on. So it's obviously a great facility. It's built for it. And as far as this game goes, no, I have nothing to add. I am ecstatic to watch this game, man. And, I'm in Missoula, the heart of Montana Grizzly country, and the rivalry is real, and the bitterness in the rivalry is real. There is a level at which the state of Montana rallies around the state of Montana when the state of Montana does something special. And this Montana State team, I think you're just hard pressed, no matter where you're at, if you're in the 406, to go, wow, this is special, and not be pulling for them. You know what I mean? And not sit there and go, I hope they get this. I hope they do it. You know what I mean? And I understand Grizz Nation. If they go 15-0 and win a national championship, that is going to be a tough pill for Grizz for the Grizz to swallow. And I completely understand that. That's not where I'm coming from. And I mean, that's not what I do here in the media and in general. I sit here and I go, man, if they are that good and they finish this thing off and they become the all-time greatest team in the history of Montana State, and I'm privileged to have been able to witness it.
Couldn't say it better. And the fact that it is a whole bunch of hardworking Montana kids who have had to take their lumps, learn their lessons. You know, they've only lost to North Dakota State and South Dakota State in the playoffs for 7 years in a row. That's it. That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for that to be the case, and then to have this opportunity, and also to do it particularly with a quarterback. There hasn't been a quarterback from the state of Montana to achieve this level of greatness, win or lose, since John Edwards. And if Tommy Mellott leads this team to victory, he's in the breath. He's in the same breath as Super Dave. And I know that Grizz fans will say that's blasphemy or whatever, but like if you reach the highest of heights and it's a historic moment for your university and the state of Montana, that is irreplaceable. And I think that would be the parting words, is like the fact that this has been built on the backs of Montana kids. I think it just shows you like what you can be as the Montana schools in this current state of affairs in the FCS. Like, it's actually not complicated. You don't have to go find crazy recruits from Sacramento and Phoenix and Denver and whatever. Just get the kids from Melstone and Butte and Bozeman and Missoula, and you're good to go, man. So
No, for sure.
And I think that's probably it. Is that's why it's such a cool story for the state of Montana.
It is. That's exactly right. And yeah, the Tommy Mellott, Dave Dickinson comparisons, we're going to need to see what sort of professional career, where, and how it plays out for Tommy Mellott. And also, there is a certain Hall of Fame in Atlanta that Dave Dickinson resides in that is pretty damn special. So it's going to take some doing to do that. But yeah, in terms of like accomplishments as a player at the collegiate level, as a quarterback from the state of Montana for a state of Montana football team, you win this one, and it's a two-person conversation, and there's nobody else in it.
And what you mean to your university and what you mean to your state. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like, I understand that Dave Dickinson
yeah.
threw for 10 million yards and he threw 116 touchdowns and 4 picks or whatever it was. And, you know, I get it. He's, 3-time Big Sky player.
But he didn't run for 1,500 yards.
I mean, bro, Tommy Mellott's going to be the second all-time leading rusher in the history of Montana State. That's a school that's done nothing but run the ball for 60 years.
It's incredible.
I mean, come on, man. He's got more rushing yards than Isaiah Fonse.
Well, let's do this. Let's get together in a week and let's reflect on what took place and we can start talking legacy then.
No doubt. Tuesdays with Tootell, Ryan Tootell here on the Big Sky Breakdown. Thanks to the R Bar, Bobcat Collective, and Town Pump. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Always.